Sun and Steel by Yukio Mishima is a philosophical work that focuses on, among other things, the cultivation of the physical body and the tragic ideal for death to occur at the apex of one's physical existence. The book's writing style is equal parts complex and sophisticated, and serves as an excellent window into the philosophy and worldview of Yukio Mishima. In contrast to the type of man he would become, the book begins with Mishima recalling how as a child he was a bookish and frail boy. Throughout his childhood, Mishima was introspective and placed a greater emphasis on intellectual achievement than physical achievement. Moreover, he also recounts how for him, his earliest memories of words predated his earliest memories of his own physical body. Mishima does not view this as a positive thing, and quite ironically for an author, goes on to speak disparagingly of the nature of words on the following pages. To quote Mishima, "Words are a medium that reduces reality to abstraction for transmission to our reason, and in their power to corrode reality inevitably lurks the danger that words themselves will be corroded too. It might be more appropriate, in fact, to liken their action to that of excess stomach fluids that digest and gradually eat away the stomach itself." Furthermore, Mishima also writes on the next page, "I had an unconscious presentiment of the subtle, fastidious laws of words, and was aware of the necessity of avoiding as far as possible coming into contact with reality via words, if one was to profit from their positive corrosive function and escape their negative aspect, if, to put more simply, one was to maintain the purity of words." What these two passages tell us is that Yukio Mishima believes reality exists independently of words, and the use of words cannot adequately capture reality. Words are required for communication, but are corrosive because when they are used, something about the essence of what they are referring to is lost. Put another way, words are labels used to describe the platonic form of a thing, but they are not the thing itself, and by their nature, must be a layer removed from the thing. While it is the case that Mishima speaks negatively of the corrosive nature of words, I would be remiss to leave out that Mishima goes one step further. He also writes very negatively of the people who are so preoccupied with words, and the realm of the imaginary, that they look down upon physical excellence. His childhood self was certainly an example of this kind of person, but in addition to his childhood self, he also has in mind smug intellectuals and artists who, more often than not, lack a beautiful physique and see themselves as above the endeavor of fitness entirely. Writing on these kinds of people on page 17, Mishima argues, "I had always felt that a bulging belly, sign of spiritual sloth, or a flat chest with protruding ribs, sign of unduly nervous sensibility, were excessively ugly, and I could not contain my surprise when I discovered that there were people who loved such signs. To me, these could only seem acts of shameless indecency, as though the owner were exposing his spiritual pudenda on the outside of his body. They represented one type of narcissism that I could never forgive." Upon reading this quote for the first time, what immediately came to mind were leftists who deride the right for being obsessed with going to the gym. It takes a 2-second Google search to find articles by leftists who are confused about why the right is emphatic about the necessity of physical fitness. More often than not, these leftists themselves have ugly physiques and mock the right for valuing fitness, because they themselves feel inadequate and need a coping mechanism. Mishima has nothing but utter contempt for these people, and it is not hard to see why. They abhor excellence and revel in mediocrity, because they themselves are not excellent and want to tear down the higher man, which segues us neatly into Mishima's comments on hero worship. Today, in this profoundly unheroic age, countless liberal pundits and academics decry the great man of history, i.e., figures like Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, or Adolf Hitler, because they do not like the idea of an overman asserting his will to power and taking history by the reins. In one of the best passages within the book, Mishima lambasts individuals who are adamantly opposed to hero worship and the great man of history. As he writes, "The cynicism that regards all hero worship as comical is always shadowed by a sense of physical inferiority. Invariably, it is the man who believes himself to be physically lacking in heroic attributes who speaks mockingly of the hero, and when he does so, how dishonest is it that his phraseology, partaking ostensibly of a logic so universal and general, should not, or at least should be assumed by the general public not to, give any clue as to his physical characteristics. I have yet to hear hero worship mocked by a man endowed with what might justly be called heroic physical attributes. Facile cynicism, invariably, is related to feeble muscles or obesity, while the cult of the hero and a mighty nihilism are always related to a mighty body and well-tempered muscles. With an understanding of Mishima's perspectives on hero worship, smug intellectuals, and the corrosive nature of words now under our belts, we may now turn our focus to the title of the book and the meaning therein. The original Japanese title translates as Sun and Iron, but English translations have opted for Sun and Steel because alliteration more easily rolls off the tongue. Regarding the first part, Sun, recall how Mishima was bookish and pain-averse as a boy. Mishima himself tells us that he was practically nocturnal and that his skin was a pallid pale shade, due to getting a lack of sunlight. He preferred the company of books, his writer's desk, and the moon more than he did nature, the sun, and playing sports with his athletically inclined peers. Mishima chides himself for this quality, not dissimilar to how we today chide people who are addicted to video games and never leave their rooms, and do not engage in physical exercise. The sun is important as its radiance instills us with an air of vitality. It provides us with vitamin D and regulates the human circadian rhythm, allowing us to sleep properly. Given those facts, it is no wonder why many non-Abrahamic religions have associated the sun with divinity and vitalistic masculinity. By robbing himself of exposure to the sun, Mishima was inhibiting his own vitalistic energy, and this is precisely why Mishima emphasizes the importance of the sun to readers. Furthermore, there is also the fact that Japan is called the land of the rising sun, and as a Japanese nationalist, it was all too appropriate for Mishima to cherish the sun's shining rays. As for the second part of the title, Steel, this refers to the physical weights used in exercise. To go from a skinny, underdeveloped physique to the physique of a natural bodybuilder requires strenuous effort in the gym. Dumbbells, barbells, and plates all constitute examples of the steel Mishima is talking about. Additionally, Mishima contrasts the qualities of steel with those of words. Unlike words, which are abstract and trigger one's imagination, the steel is tangible and concrete. The steel causes one to be conscious of the self as it really is, because to lift it requires exerting effort which cannot be faked. Lifting the steel causes the body to resemble it. A flabby physique will become harder as the muscles grow, and a skinny physique will get heavier with every pound of lean mass put on. But in addition to this, there is another quality of the steel that cannot go unmentioned. Yukio Mishima observed that training with the steel requires a certain fire within a person that not everybody has. Fitness is a quality of the elite, and though anyone can become fit if they are willing to put in the effort, most people are lazy and pain-averse and will not do the work. To quote Mishima, "Bulging muscles, a taut stomach, and a tough skin correspond respectively to an intrepid fighting spirit, the power of dispassionate intellectual judgment, and a robust disposition. I hasten to point out here that I do not believe ordinary people to be like this." Having come to understand what Mishima means by steel, we are now equipped to segue into his philosophy on death. Mishima did not value aesthetics solely out of a sense of vanity. In truth, he was obsessed with the idea of dying a romantic yet tragic death, and aesthetics was an inseparable component of what constituted a good death in Mishima's mind. Simply put, Mishima thought that the ideal death should occur at the height of one's physical development. He was disgusted at the idea of growing old and dying on a deathbed, and thought a tragic yet noble death was a more preferable alternative. To assist the audience in grasping why he thought this, I shall now quote him at length. Specifically, "I cherished a romantic impulse towards death, yet at the same time I required a strictly classical body as its vehicle. A peculiar sense of destiny made me believe that the reason why my romantic impulse towards death remained unfulfilled in reality was the immensely simple fact that I lacked the necessary physical qualifications. A powerful, tragic frame and sculpturesque muscles were indispensable in a romantically noble death." Any confrontation between weak, flabby flesh and death seemed absurdly inappropriate. Longing at 18 for an early demise, I felt myself unfitted for it. I lacked, in short, the muscles suitable for a dramatic death, and it deeply offended my romantic pride that it should be this unsuitability that had permitted me to survive the war. What Mishima is referencing here is how during World War II, when he had not yet begun training with the steel, he tried to join the army out of a sense of patriotic duty, but was deemed unfit for military service. In fact, the weak Mishima was incorrectly diagnosed with tuberculosis and remained safe at home in Japan, while the regiment he would have been a part of died in the Philippines. For the rest of his life, this plagued Mishima, and very likely contributed to his choice of dying by seppuku in 1970, after a failed coup to try and restore the emperor to divine status. Being denied a warrior's death caused him to crave a romantic yet tragic death, and upon realizing this, his admiration for the kamikaze pilots and the samurai of feudal Japan becomes more understandable. In conclusion, Sun and Steel by Yukio Mishima is an inspiring, albeit complex read that should prompt someone to take up physical exercise. Its utility for the reader is of a philosophical and motivational rather than political nature, and ought to motivate oneself to strive for physical perfection. Sun and Steel provides insight into one of the most interesting characters in the canon of right-wing literary thought, and warrants reading for these aforementioned reasons.